So Deuteronomy 30, verse 6. And Yahuwah your Elohim shall circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed, to love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, so that you might live. If you start keeping the commandments according to the Torah, not according to your doctrine, not according to rabbinical takanot, or not according to the Talmud, if you start keeping the commandments of Yahuwah, you have started the process of circumcising your heart. That's a totally different thing. I have to want to live in a relationship according to the instructions and the rules of that relationship. Circumcision of the flesh is a sign of the covenant, but I can't have the outward sign of the covenant if my inside isn't where it needs to be. Bereshit, or Genesis 17:11, and you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall become a sign of the covenant between me and you. So the circumcision of the flesh comes later. You need to serve and obey before you have the sign of the covenant. This matter was so important to Paul that he sent Judas and Silas to Jerusalem to talk to the Jerusalem council about it. And this is where they came up with these things. Okay, well, you don't have to be circumcised, but you can't kill anybody. You can't commit adultery. You have to believe in Yahuwah Elohim. Let's give them the very basics. Let's get them started with the basic stuff. Then they can begin to add to their knowledge base and grow in that relationship. Then they can present themselves for circumcision. Acts 5:1 says, and certain men came down from Judah and were teaching the brothers, unless you are circumcised according to the practice of Moses, you're unable to be saved. You can't be delivered. You can't be saved. Literally, this would be a good use of the word saved. If you don't get circumcised, then Yahusha, what he accomplished, won't mean anything for you. And that will make sense once we look at exactly what Yahusha accomplished. Okay? So there was a discussion. There was issues. If you have the handout, the rest of the this little discussion in Acts is there. Now, we're not going to go into the whole thing, but we have to understand, Paul wanted, first of all, to train, to teach, to reestablish the house of Israel in the heart before they would go into the circumcision. And this is also found in Torah. If we read in Torah, we're going to find that the children of Israel, you remember you had the wicked generation that didn't want to cross over, and then the restored generation that would eventually cross over 40 years down the road. They did not circumcise until it came time to cross over the Jordan. They spent 40 years learning how to walk with Elohim, how to have a relationship with Elohim, how to seek Elohim, how to be in the presence of Elohim. And then right before they were to cross over, they were circumcised. Then they crossed over into the promised land. Okay? Verse 15, or Acts 15:16. Actually 15:15. The words of the prophets agree, and it's been written, after this I shall return and rebuild the booth of David, which has fallen down, and I shall rebuild its ruins, and I shall set it up, so that the remnant of mankind shall seek Yahuwah, even all the nations on whom my name has been called, says Yahuwah, who is doing all this. So it's still not the end of the episode. The newly restored children of Elohim have to do what is pleasing in the eyes of Yahuwah. They have to start by doing certain things while learning how Elohim wants to be served. They have to learn how to have a relationship that is pleasing with Yahuwah Elohim. husbands, if you do it right, you're going to learn what it takes to be pleasing to your wife in your relationship. Wives, you're going to learn what it takes to be pleasing to your husband in your relationship. There's no difference here, okay? Acts 15:19. Therefore I judge that we should not trouble those from among the nations who are turning to Elohim. This is Paul. He's saying we cannot force them to physically alter their body until they're ready. Okay? But that we write to them to abstain from defilements of idols, from committing fornication, and from eating what is strangled, and from blood. Okay? We're taking the most basic of the commandments and giving them. Okay? You don't have to get circumcised right away. Let's teach you how to walk slowly. And this is what Paul is dealing with in Acts and in Galatians. But there's so much more to Galatians, and we'll get to it. We may not get to it in this set of videos. We will probably have our last talk of Galatians, because we're going to get into chapter 5 of Galatians, and we're going to need time to really look at that. This is kind of setting us up to get into Galatians. So we have to consider very seriously that the letter to the Galatians now is not about abandoning the Torah. It is about the circumcision, and it's about the covenant. It is about what it takes to have a relationship. What we've considered in this series, in this second part of Galatians, is the difference between rabbinical decree and the interpretation based on rabbinical decree versus being able to verify what the Torah actually says and live according to what the Torah actually says. The two very important components that Paul discusses in chapters 2, 3, and 4 of Galatians. And we've also taken a look at a very brief history that Yahuwah Elohim divorced the house of Israel, divorced the northern kingdom, but that he wants to bring them back. He can't do that based on his words in Leviticus, but he made a way also in Leviticus. And we also considered that there's two components that we have to be aware of in the death of Yahusha. The first of those components is the blood component that restores a covenant. When two people went into covenant, they would each shed blood and put it on a stone and mix the blood together, stating that we are now one. Okay? Yahusha shed his blood as a representation of Yahuwah Elohim, but also as a representative of the Adam, that the blood of Elohim, the blood of the Adam were both represented. Okay? Yahuwah Elohim can't bleed. He had to use a tabernacle that he dwelt within, and Yahusha shed that blood, so both parties were represented. Okay? So the covenant could be restored. In other words, Yahusha was also a representative of the husband. And as a representative of the husband dies. Okay? He was a vessel that carried the fullness of Yahuwah. That vessel dies. The Son is resurrected. And when the Son is resurrected, the Son can now pay for the redemption of the wife and bring that divorced wife back. Okay? Very important components that we have to understand as we go into chapter 5 of Galatians next week. There's a lot of stuff to think about. Watch the video a few extra times. I will send out handouts for chapter 5. This is a study started by Lorraine Victor. She is a precious woman, very well versed in the Bible. And I was fortunate enough to get this from her and be able to put some notes to it myself. And she really, really brings out what Paul is talking about in Galatians. So until next week, I love you all. I miss you. I look forward to seeing you again soon. If you're new to this YouTube channel, let me see if I get this right. Be sure to like and subscribe and be kind in your comments. Until next time, shalom.